This is incredible. So Isaac, before he started, he mentioned something about how when he first met me, he made a joke that I was an art curator. That's not actually what the story was. I met Isaac about 8 years ago. I was at a point in my career where I knew I wanted to join an agency, and more importantly, I really wanted to find a mentor to work with, someone that I could look up to for advice and for feedback, and someone that I can really just enjoy working with and around. And with Isaac, I've found at least most of those things, so that's been great. But when he did interview me, he didn't really spend a lot of time looking at my resume, and for whatever reason, thought I was like 20 years older than I really was, and thought that my previous company was a museum, and it was just, he hired me anyway. I guess he was just that desperate. And so, of all the things that Isaac has done for this company, the one that stands out the most is his development and advocacy of our core values. And he put a lot of time and energy into developing these core values over the years, and the first of which is this principle called idiotic optimism. And idiotic optimism is how you jump off the starting block. It's this attitude of, as if you're in an Olympic race and you're looking around saying, I'm not really sure how I got here. I don't know if I really deserve to be here, but I think I can win. And that mindset of idiotic optimism is really the fundamental piece of what has helped us grow over the years. And it's this attitude of, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna take on this challenge, we're gonna go headstrong into it, and we're gonna figure it out. And as I reflect on this more, I think, the name of the company is Adventure Media, and what is the word adventure? Other than just an idiotic, optimistic way of thinking about challenges that we encounter in life, right? Every adventure you ever heard of is a story about a hero that meets adversity or near failure and perseveres because of an idiotic, optimistic attitude. So Isaac, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking a bet on that 45-year-old art curator that had no business being in that office that day. And this event, I gotta say, this is absolutely incredible. Thank you all for being here. This is by far the most idiotically optimistic thing we have ever pulled off. And clearly we still don't even know what we're doing. We don't have a lot of the things figured out, but we will do it. We will figure it out because that is deep rooted into our core values and our mentality. Thanks, Isaac. So, I'm so excited to be here. This is really an honor to have this opportunity to talk to you guys about a bunch of topics that get me really fired up. I think this is such an incredible time to be a marketer, to be in this, to be at this point of digital advertising and paid media, because what we're witnessing right now is this transition and a shift that's unlike anything we've witnessed over the last 10 years. So whether you're brand new to the industry, or you've been here for a long time and you're excited for change, I think you're in the right place, and I think we're all gonna be able to power through this together. So let's get started. I want to start with this guy. This is Abraham Maslow. A lot of you probably know him from his hierarchy of needs. There was an ongoing joke in college. I studied marketing in college. I didn't go to art school. There was an ongoing joke that you didn't have to show up to class for at least the first 3 weeks because every single marketing and psychology professor just loves to start with a section on Maslow's hierarchy. I can see Akash laughing. Akash is another Penn State marketing guy. By the way, Akash is from AdSkate. They're a sponsor today. Can we give a round of applause to AdSkate, Akash, and the rest of the guys here? But it feels fitting to start with the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy, but I'm more interested in this other principle of Maslow. It's Maslow's hammer, which is the idea that if the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything around you starts to look like a nail. And this happens because of psychology. It happens because our brains are wired to seek heuristics and shortcuts. And really, Maslow's hammer is a warning to business leaders and marketers and really anybody about our natural inclination and our resistance to change. And really, what this means to me is that we need more tools, especially in an ever complex and changing environment. So hold on to that thought as I trip over this wire. Hold on to that thought because now we're going to together solve a riddle. The 3 empty jars riddle. I'm going to give you 3 jars. Now everyone try to keep up here, okay? We have 3 jars. We have 21 ounces, 120 ounces, and 3 ounces. And the objective is to measure out exactly 100 ounces. If you've ever seen Die Hard with a Vengeance, this is a similar type of problem they solve there. The way to do it, to cut to the chase for anyone that feels uncomfortable here, is that you start with the middle jug, the 127 ounces, you fill it to a brim, and then you use that jug to pour into the first one, 21 ounces, and then twice the third jug, and then you are left with exactly 100 ounces. Okay, not too difficult, right? No one really expected to be doing math this early in the morning, but we got through it. We're going to do another riddle. Same idea, different sizes. 18 ounces, 48 ounces, and 4 ounces. What we need to do now is get exactly 22 ounces. How do we get there? It's actually pretty simple. All you need to do is add 18 and 4. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you started with 48 and started to walk backwards? Guys, I literally just told you about Maslow's hammer. Like, we just went through this. But see, that is happening in real time. This was a famous study done that proved that people are very much inclined to try to solve problems with familiar tools, things they're more comfortable with. I actually did this study in our office a few weeks back. And I happened to work with some of the best problem solvers that you could ever meet. And I was completely astonished to see that nearly everybody fell victim to the trap of Maslow's hammer. There was like 1 or 2 exceptions. Mikhail got it pretty quickly. Joshua Wertentile, where's Joshua? He got it like literally right away, completely spoiled the fun. Let's hear it for Joshua. He ran the New York City Marathon a few days ago. He can barely walk. A little while later, we're going to put him up on crutches, and he's going to talk about local search ads. So that'll be great. Okay, so that's really what today is all about. Because we're in the business of solving complex marketing problems for our clients. And every now and again, we need to completely change our toolkit and evaluate what we're working with and force ourselves to learn new skills and adapt. But before we proceed, let's start with an honest conversation about what our hammer that we've been using looks like. And I've given this a lot of thought. And I've come to the realization that the last 10 years in the digital advertising industry has really just been a series of different arbitrage opportunities. And by arbitrage, I mean that advertising impressions and clicks that can be bought at a discount, cheaper than what they should be worth, generally if there's increased competition and adoption of an ad platform. This is a famous slide that was presented by Mary Meeker of Morgan Stanley in 2012. And what this slide really shows is that there was a massive disparity in the advertising space in where advertisers were investing their budgets in 2011. Advertisers were over-leveraged in print and radio. They were under-leveraged in internet and mobile. It was a $20 billion opportunity. Consumers were spending 10% of their time on mobile devices, but advertisers were only willing to spend 1% of their budgets on that medium. Now that was 10 years ago, right? And the first people that sprung up into action and started advertising on these platforms were the big winners. We've all heard stories. Gary Vaynerchuk has actually talked about this. He said that he built his family's liquor store business from a $3 million a year company to a $60 million conglomerate on the backs of the early days of Google AdWords, because he was able to buy the keyword wine for 5 cents a clip. And he was just throwing more and more money at it, and it worked like crazy. The keyword wine does not cost 5 cents a clip. It costs probably several dollars at this point. But because there was no competition, you were able to just show up, place an ad on almost any sort of keyword search, and it worked like crazy. Now, eventually, people showed up, right? It was sort of the Wild West. It was a bit of a gold rush. But eventually it got a little saturated. Those types of broad keywords became a little more competitive, not as cheap. So the next phase of digital advertising was people looking for what we call long-tail keywords. And a long-tail keyword is, like wine was very broad. A long-tail keyword is more descriptive. It has probably more words in it, right? So an example here is Best Paso Robles Cabernet under $20. It's a little bit different. It's very descriptive, and the advertiser can find this long-tail keyword and place an ad and bring a user right to a landing page that sells a Paso wine for less than $20. This was this next great arbitrage movement. advertisers were able to look for these look for these long tail keywords. There was generally less competition. You could bid on them, and it was a massive home run. So eventually, long tail keywords, we all had the same keyword research tools. We all ended up reading the same search engine land articles, and that eventually caught up to ourselves. So the next arbitrage movement was something called quality score, which I'm not going to dwell on for a long time because it's still, I have like I'm mentally scarred from it. But this era was really defined by like growth hacks, things that weren't really traditional marketing, but it was single keyword ad groups and trying to get like marginal gains in click-through rate. But that's really what people were fighting over back in those days, until one day we woke up and realized that mobile was a thing. That consumers were finally willing to not just search on mobile, but also complete purchases and make buying decisions on their mobile devices. And we woke up one day and said, oh my God, if we are just willing to bid on mobile ads and nobody else is, these clicks can be bought for basically free. And between like 2015 and 2018, by just opting into mobile, we were able to drastically scale our clients' campaigns. And it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And then came automation, which I would consider the last great arbitrage movement. Same idea with mobile. The early days of automation, the clicks were so incredibly cheap. Smart shopping was just, you turn it on and it works, and the conversion rate's lower, but the clicks are basically free. And during this time, we were an early adopter, and we scaled our campaigns like crazy. But eventually we realized that the arbitrage is gonna fall out. You know, that's not going to continue working. And by the way, this is just Google. This was happening in other platforms as well. Facebook was experiencing its own wave of arbitrage. If you were a Facebook advertiser in 2016 using a lookalike audience for targeting, you were printing money. If you were, in 2018, if you were using campaign budget optimization or dynamic creative, you were printing money. And if at any point during those 5 years you were using multiple pixel events other than just page view and purchase, you had the power to literally sway presidential elections. This was the arbitrage that people didn't realize, and that was the power that it yielded. And then depending on your industry, arbitrage can be found in Reddit and LinkedIn and Pinterest and all other areas. And you can still find low-cost opportunities, but by and large, the arbitrage, the low-cost, low-hanging fruit period is very much over. And make no mistake, I'm not kind of shaming it, because adventure media certainly would not be where we are today if not for our ability to capitalize on arbitrage. But now we need to recognize that the arbitrage era is now behind us, and we need to look at what is currently happening now. And the thing is, like, I'm not sad about this or scared or frustrated. Like, as a matter of fact, like, I'm pretty pumped, because now we can be marketers again. And it's a clean slate for the entire industry. Things like privacy changes and user-generated content and performance max and podcast advertising and customer data platforms, these are all new areas for all of us. So whether you're new to the industry or you've been around for a while and you're excited for what's about to happen for us, I have great news for you. This is ours for the taking. And we're all in this together. None of us have any idea what we're doing. Let's be honest. We're going to figure it out because we're idiotic optimists. So, in this modern era, with marketing kind of coming back in its resurgence, let's think about what it looks like. And in a way, we're going to go back to basics. Later today, Marvin Waldman is going to present on creative briefs. Marvin is an absolute legend. You guys are going to love his talk. He helped build brands like Colgate and Campbell's Soup, and we use his creative approach for our clients today. You're going to hear our team talk about topics in cross-channel media and full funnel strategy and attribution. And a lot of these presentations are going to pull from traditional marketing concepts, things like the 4 Ps of marketing, or Cialdini's principles of influence, or my personal favorite, Maslow's hierarchy. As it turns out, those marketing professors actually knew what they were talking about. Pretty crazy. Okay, so now before we get into because it's not really the same, right? It's a little bit different. So before we kind of describe what's different in this new era, let's do a quick recap of where we're at, what we've covered so far. So we had an arbitrage opportunity. We squeezed the living hell out of that arbitrage opportunity. Opportunity no longer exists, and marketing is back. This is very exciting. Okay, let's move on to this new era, and let's kind of go back to basics and figure it out. This is the marketing funnel that we've all been taught: awareness, consideration, conversion. And what happened here, this was built at a time where consumers became aware about products from television and radio while sitting in their living rooms. Newspapers ruled consideration with not promo codes, with coupons and with information about sales and discounts. And then conversion really took place at the bottom of the funnel in store. People were making decisions in real time. Advertisers worked with retailers to battle over shelf space and end caps and things like that. So that was really where those in-store decisions were made at the bottom of the funnel. And when digital advertising came to be, the marketing industry just attempted to squeeze it into this existing funnel that we already have, which is like classic Maslow's hammer. It's like, hey, like the tech industry said, hey, look, everyone, we have this new frontier of mobile and internet, and it's going to completely change how we behave forever. And the marketing industry said, awesome, let's take that and squeeze it into this funnel that we've been using for 100 years. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But the very beginning of digital advertising took square aim at the bottom of the funnel, mainly with Google search, right? Because Google allowed you to place an ad for a product directly in front of a person that was declaring that they were looking for that product and wanted to buy it, which actually fit in that model because it kind of replicates that in-store motion. But then the attempts to scale up funnel is where things got complicated, because the first attempt at consideration was with banner ads. And they were literally designed to look and feel like newspaper ads. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't work. And now, while that's happening and people are learning, like this doesn't really work, advertisers and brand managers and CXOs are being conditioned by the slot machine of Google AdWords, where they can clearly see money in, money out, and you can clearly see click to conversion, conversion value, return on ad spend. Everything looks great. It's very concise. It's very comforting. So anything that didn't now fit into that new model was just like out of the question altogether. And that is really how the arbitrage movement began, because instead of being able to scale up funnel, we were all just kind of forced into this little framework of the bottom of the funnel, and we were just like fighting like animals over like the bottom feeding like whatever was left. But here's the thing. Real marketing does not take place at the bottom of the funnel. It's mostly just merchandising and sales. At the very best, it is one of the 4 Ps. It is place. It's being in the right place at the right time. But it's 2022. It's basically 2023. And we're marketers again. We're not going to be satisfied by just fighting over the leftover bottom funnel arbitrage. We're going to go out there and we're going to build markets and demand for our products and services. And it's going to look a little bit different this time. So the real reason that this funnel doesn't work is because this was built at a time where the buyer's journey was very linear. TV ads were consumed on your couch in your living room. Newspapers were consumed at the kitchen table or on the train. And you made buying decisions in store. While you were sitting on your couch, you were physically unable to buy the products that you were being shown an ad for. You literally could not buy that product. And then when you were in store, you were not also seeing TV ads. Especially, you absolutely were not seeing TV ads for products that were being sold by a competitor in a different store across town. So this doesn't make any sense. And now, it completely is different. Like, this thing has changed everything. Because now, we can do all of these things at once. They can happen in any order. At any given point, we have access to unlimited alternatives and options, and all the information that's ever existed ever is at our fingertips, and it completely changes the way that any of us make decisions in a modern ecosystem. And to some extent, I think we would all agree that this takes place, that it's different now, that the internet and mobile is sort of changed the way. But a few years back, there was a research team at Google that attempted to really figure this out. And they said, like, what really happens when the consumer wakes up in a modern shopping environment where they have unlimited access to alternatives and choice and just all the information in the world? And can we possibly visualize that and really measure it? And what transpired was this research report called Decoding Decisions, Making Sense of the Messy Middle. And it's published on the Think with Google blog. It's a 100-page report. It's actually a really good read. I recommend it. But what it really proved is that the consumer decision-making process is no longer linear. In fact, it's an absolute mess. So much so that they called it the messy middle. From the report, is that there? We call it the messy middle, a space of abundant information and unlimited choice that shoppers have learned to manage using a range of cognitive shortcuts. And then they developed a new funnel to visualize it, and it looks like this. So we're gonna walk through this because this is like one of my favorite things that has been produced in the marketing ecosystem, and not enough people are talking about it. It's been out for like 2 years, and I'm obsessed with it. So around the top level here, we have exposure. It's sort of your modern version of brand awareness, except this time, instead of just being at the top where you see it in your living room, it happens everywhere. Every single interaction you have with a brand or the buyer's journey falls within a backdrop. It's influenced by brand exposure. The trigger is whatever the catalyst is that moves somebody from a passive to an active buying state, which kickstarts the entire process. And then what you see in the middle is really the messy middle. It's the exploration and the evaluation. So when consumers enter this phase, they expand their consideration sets through exploration. And then they contract their consideration sets through evaluation. And they kind of go back and forth. So like, think about this. Think if you're looking for a winter coat, and you go to Google and do a search for winter coat, scroll through a couple ads, you click on something, now you're on North Face's website. And now you're like, oh my God, there's like a ton of options here. It's a little overwhelming. There's down jackets, there's ski jackets. What the hell is a 3-in-1? There's waterproof, water resistant. I don't know what size I am. Are these coats any good? Are there alternatives? What's a good price point? Now you're back on Google, or you're reading something on Yelp about a local store that sells North Face jackets, and then you end up reading a blog post about reviews. You're watching YouTube videos. You're pinging back and forth between these two things until ultimately you figure out something you're somewhat satisfied with, and you drop into experience. And experience is what happens when the consumers finally turn their attention to your brand. And that includes everything from your website experience, your usability, your checkout experience, and then everything post-purchase. And again, all of this happens within a backdrop, the halo of exposure. What I really like about this graphic is that it sort of reminds me of satellites orbiting like around planets. And it's as if like the consumer is the satellite, and we're using all these marketing tactics and messaging and strategies as a gravitational force to keep these consumers within our orbit and not necessarily fall into our competitor's orbit. And then maybe, and this is where it gets really interesting, maybe we can use some sort of tactic to steer the consumers toward the direction we want them to go in, ultimately to purchase. And that was the second part of the study. The research team at Google went on to look at what, if anything, would steer users in the direction we want them to go in. And what they settled on, it was this very, very crazy, long, expensive, wild, very interesting study. They settled on 6 cognitive biases, which are category heuristics, the power of now, social proof, scarcity bias, authority bias, and the power of free. I'm not gonna go into any of these, but you can read the Think with Google blog, or, here's the irony, you can open up basically any book that's been written on marketing psychology or consumer behavior over the last 100 years, and they'll probably talk about most of these things. And because also, Maslow's hammer, consumers are guilty of that as well. Like now, with abundant information and choice and alternatives, we are also guilty. We don't know how to make decisions, so we go to TikTok and we see user-generated content that helps social proof. Oh, this is someone that likes me, that's like me, that's using this product. Seems good enough. That'll help me in my decision. These are things that actually influence buying decisions today in this new, modern, messy ecosystem. The last thing I want to touch upon here is the exposure piece. A lot of people refer to this as, brand awareness, and I I try not to. I try to remove that from my lexicon altogether because I think a lot of people in the industry have made up their mind about brand awareness. A lot of people will say things like, this doesn't work for us, or we don't have the budget for it, or we don't have the budget for it yet, or it's a waste of money. And it's frustrating because that take was formed from a world where brand marketing and performance marketing were two separate entities. For the last 100 years, this was relevant. And what you have, if you go to any agency, like big agency or a brand, they have two different teams. You have the brand team and you have the performance team. And the brand team is responsible for things like brand awareness and affinity and ad recall and impressions and reach and brand lift and garbage like that. And on the performance side, performance marketers are responsible for driving revenue, and they're judged by return on ad spend and profit. And this made sense. Those are the optimization KPIs that made sense in a world where the buying process was linear. In a world where TV ads were consumed in your living room and buying decisions were made in store, and there was zero crossover at any point between these areas. But that's not how things work anymore, is it? And despite that, we still are operating in this world where brand marketing is different from performance marketing. And we've actually proven this to be true. There was a few years ago, a large global retailer worth over $4 billion came to us and said, we have our two teams, our brand team and our performance team, and they all have separate ad accounts. We have separate Facebook accounts, we have separate Google accounts, and we need help figuring out what our budget mix should be for the coming year. Because we know there's seasonality, we want to figure out how to maximize profit over the next year. What should our budget look like? So we got access to the data, we dug into it. This is really Nechama's, this was totally Nechama's project, and I'm going to take credit for it. But what we really did here was come away with this recommendation of saying, okay, well, your brand team is optimizing for impressions and reach, and the other team is going for return on ad spend, but there's like a ton of crossover here. And we proved that the brand ads were actually driving a lot of sales, and the performance ads were also driving a lot of brand lift. So our recommendation, we went back to CMO and said, hey, look, what you should really do is consolidate your teams, consolidate your ad accounts. This will unlock all these other benefits, and here's what that budget mix should actually look like in a world where you're benefiting from all these different considerations that we're now looking at. And the CMO said, that's really interesting, but I'm good. It's a little complicated. We have offices in all these different countries. We have a lot of people on these teams, a lot of salaries, a lot of staff. It's just kind of a big organization to make that sort of change. If you could give us a more simple recommendation, that'd be really great. And it's like, oh my God, this is so frustrating because the data was right in front of them. And this is how dinosaurs run a business. And if I could give you any advice, it is to not be a dinosaur. Don't make sacrifices for the well-being and the future growth of the profit of your business. And that's not the only time we've run this study. We've done this, we've looked into this so many times that I actually can't believe that I'm still on this stage talking about it. The other one that comes to mind is when smart shopping. So smart shopping is a Google product that it was released as the new version of shopping campaigns, which are the product listing ads. You do search on Google, you see the ad that you click on the side, it brings you right to that product. Smart shopping was a new version that it placed those ads, but it also placed those types of ads on display and YouTube and Gmail and other types of video placements. But advertisers all looked at that the same way we'd always looked at regular shopping ads. And we said, oh, well, we're going to judge this by the return on ad spend column. How many people clicked on these ads and how many people converted and what was the value that was associated with their conversion? And eventually, one day we kind of looked at this and said, this doesn't make a lot of sense because we're getting a ton of impressions. It's really cheap. Is it possible that a lot of these ads that are in mediums like display, video, Gmail, is there a brand lift that's happening from these impressions even if that user doesn't click on that ad? And the answer was yes. And it wasn't being measured in the return on ad spend column. And like nobody was thinking this way. Nobody was doing this with smart shopping. And by the way, smart shopping is like dead. It's so old now, it's gone. This is how long this has been happening, but all of us together, everyone in the industry is still evaluating performance based on what's being, like, a proxy that's being reported in the return on ad spend column. So what I'm really getting at here is we need to be willing to think differently about how we value and assess the value of our advertising dollars and our spend. We need to come up with new measurement protocols and expectations about the impact of our ads and how they might be working together in a cohesive ecosystem. So, the 3 things that I want you to keep in mind today as we go through the rest of these presentations. Number 1, brand marketing and performance marketing are no longer separate entities. And this is, I forgot to mention this before, great creative is what bridges the gap between those 2 entities. And that's something we're going to talk about extensively today. Second theme. Oh, skipped ahead here. Our KPIs have changed. We need to change the way we think about our goals and measurement and our KPIs associated with the different types of ads that we're running. And finally, marketing is back. And in this new era, when the marketing problems that we're facing are more complex than ever, we need more tools. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is my rallying cry. Never always, never never. Now, keep this in mind as you go throughout the day. Because as we continue to add more tools to our toolkit, this is a framework for thinking about how to use those tools in practice. There is no one strategy that works every time, for every situation. And I don't want anyone to think that way. And then on the other side, never, never. Like, there's no real bad ideas or bad strategies that will never work. There's just more unique scenarios that you should just put that in your back pocket and wait for the right moment to use it. And that's the sort of framework that everyone here, I think, at Adventure Media, carries with them every single day, how we think about solving marketing problems with the never always, never never mentality. Thank you. This has been an absolute honor to talk to you guys about all this today. I really appreciate it.